All right, so we do have a good number of people here this afternoon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I am Kashima, Assistant Director of Alumni and Volunteer Experience here at the University of Chicago, and I'm very excited to welcome all of you to our monthly Meyer Career Webinar. And today's topic will be Flip the Script on Age at Work, led by Maggie Riyad. Maggie Riyad is a Booth alum and recent entrepreneur after working in various leadership roles at large corporations and smaller software companies, and she is the co-founder of 50 Wise, a startup business and recruiting firm dedicated to unlocking the value of older workers to provide a strong talent pipeline for hiring organizations. And we are very excited to welcome her here this afternoon. As we dive in today's conversation, please submit your questions in the Q&A box only to help us manage all the questions that come in. And we will try to address as many questions as possible during the conversation. And then after the webinar, a survey will pop up. So please complete that survey. We would love to hear your feedback. And lastly, we will be sending a recording to everyone along with some additional resources by the end of the week. So please keep an eye out for that in your inbox. With that said, please welcome Maggie.
Hi, everyone. Let me just get the slides going. As Kashima said, I am a recent entrepreneur, and I'm here today to share some of our experience with you. My background is in strategy and innovation, and I've had mainly professional services or relationship account manager roles. I live in Chicago, but I'm actually in northern Miami area today, broadcasting. I enjoy traveling, pickleball, and volunteering at my church. I speak Spanish from living in Venezuela during my high school years and Arabic from my Egyptian heritage. So a little bit about 50 Wise. I co-founded this business with my childhood friend, Sylvia Minyas, who's on the webinar also. We both experienced the myths that we're about to discuss, and we wanted to create a better way for older professionals to get noticed in the market. Along the way, we saw that we were also helping employers. Many of the hiring managers we work with have said we're bringing new candidates to the table and fresh talent that they have not seen before. We're on a mission to transform the hiring process and improve outcomes for both employers and experienced professionals. I'll be sharing more success stories and tactics as we go through the webinar. All right. So first, I wanted to set some context. The population is aging, and as you can see in this chart, the US birth rate has been dropping significantly since 2007. So that means that the younger demographic segments are not keeping up with previous growth rates of older segments. And this will eventually impact our workforce supply, leading to a shrinking labor force and higher pressure on programs like Social Security and Medicare. For most of modern history, the workforce looked like a pyramid, which you can see on the left here, where the young people at the base were supporting a smaller number of older workers at the top. But now we're moving towards a new paradigm in history where the dependency ratio is going from a pyramid to a pillar. Here you can see that people are living longer, healthier lives. Life expectancy is 77 years old at birth back in 2020, so it continues to increase with medical advances and proactive lifestyles. And here you can see that folks are making lifestyle choices and very interested in finding ways to live longer, healthier lives. But this chart is one of my favorites and I think the most compelling. And basically what you can see here is that the only piece of the pie that is projected to grow in 2050 is the 55-year plus group. And as a matter of fact, all the other pieces are shrinking. So this is very, very compelling in terms of when you put all of this together, that the population is aging and we need to figure out a better way for experienced professionals to continue working. So, with this context in mind, let's dig into the reality that we're experiencing today. There's a widespread bias and disfavor towards older professionals, and in many cases, it's unconscious and deeply ingrained. I'm going to share with you 6 myths that have been playing out in the marketplace based on misconceptions and maybe one off experiences. And just like all the other isms in the world, ageism limits our potential. And with this one in particular, there's a higher likelihood that each of us will run into it if it's left unchecked in our business practices. After all, aging is a natural process, and for many of us, a privilege. Okay, so let me set up how this is going to go. For each of the 6 myths, I'm going to share a common phrase that will probably be very familiar to you. I'll go into the roots of the misconceptions and key factors that actually fuel the beliefs. And then we'll look at data and research that supports a different reality. And then I close out each myth with a flipped script we can use to change the narrative. So I welcome your questions, comments as we go through the content. Please feel free to post in the Q&A and we'll do our best to address all the points. All right. So before we jump into the myths, I'd like to ask a question and want you to put your first and immediate thought in the chat. Don't be shy. There's no wrong response. And this will go in the chat box to everyone so that we can all see what's going on. Okay, ready? What is your first reaction when you hear the words older worker? All right, lots of things coming through. It's coming in so fast, I can't keep track, but I definitely appreciate the engagement. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to put a pin in that. Feel free to keep posting your ideas, and let's dig in to the myths. Okay, so the first one: older workers are rigid and stuck in their ways. Sound familiar? Probably for most of us, yes. Okay, so let's start with the misconceptions. There's a misconception that older workers struggle to adapt to new systems or methods, or that we might even prefer traditional workplace structures. Most of us started our careers in traditional structures, so the assumption is we can't adapt. Those workplace models thrived on predictability, bureaucracy, or routine, but that's more of a reflection on the company environment and less a reflection on the individual. Along similar lines, there is the concept of early retirement packages in large-scale downsizing efforts reinforces the idea that older workers were dispensable or less future-ready. And media coverage has been depicting entrepreneurship as young individuals versus a multi-generational mix. Many think that older professionals resist change, are uncomfortable with disruption, new ideas, or innovation. This misconception can be linked to people asking questions and a more methodical approach to thinking longer term. And when that's juxtaposed with younger coworkers who want to jump right in, you get the misconception of being rigid. Another way this shows up is confidence in judgment. Having seen past trends fail, an experienced professional balances enthusiasm with insight, a form of wisdom that can again be mislabeled as rigidity. And again, the modern work culture glorifies the youth as the driver of creativity and often spotlight 20-something disruptors, reinforcing the idea that innovation and energy belongs to the youth. And then the last piece here is that we are less open to feedback. In many cases, we have a firm direction on a specific plan or a path forward, and it can be read as inflexible or resistance to feedback, especially if a younger manager or coworker might interpret this as being defensive. Older workers may not actively solicit feedback the way younger workers do, but that doesn't mean they resist it when it's offered appropriately. All right, let's look at some facts and the reality that we can see today. Older workers ask thoughtful questions before implementing change, not out of resistance, but because we understand the ripple effects. Older professionals are among the most adaptable groups in the workforce because we've lived through massive shifts in technology, work styles, economic conditions over several decades. Think about it. We moved from typewriters to tablets, mainframes and computer labs to PCs, faxes to email. Do you remember those screeching, high-pitched tones with the faxes? In-person meetings to hybrid collaboration, and local offices to global digital teams, often multiple times in our career. Research shows that entrepreneurs perform better with age. So, Kashima, this is the time to launch the poll, if you could. So, if you could give us your response here, what do you think is the average age of a successful startup founder in the US? All right. Okay, you guys got it. 42, 41.9 to be exact is the average age of a founder. Um, and a 50-year-old founder is 1.8 times more likely to create a highly successful firm than a 30-year-old. And today, the top 0.1% of high growth firms had founders with an average age of 45. So research also shows that older workers improve business performance. We're seeing multi-generational teams are 21% more likely to outperform peers in innovation when older members are included in early stage problem solving. We're also seeing workers in their 50s and 60s show equal or higher adaptability than younger workers when given opportunities to retrain. So I have a lot of research that I've been collecting, and I am happy to share all the actual references and specific research with you at the end of the presentation. We have a way to do that. So I'm not going to go through all the references now. I'll just give you the top line findings. Um, and if you want a couple of marketplace examples of success, we were looking at Adobe. They have something called an Experience League where senior employees led cross-generational mentoring groups, helping teams adopt new marketing analytic tools faster than expected. Okay. So if we were going to flip the script, 50 Wise would say older workers don't resist change. They help teams navigate it with confidence. So some of the things that we see with our candidates as we help them. For example, I did a mock interview last week, and the individual was very professional and had great executive presence. But all his responses were very well prepared and seemed like they were rehearsed. So sometimes that comes across as rigid. One item I pointed out was to build in something a little more personal into your responses. People hire people they can relate to or they like. Show curiosity about how the company is evolving and adapting with current trends. You might say something like, how is your team integrating new technologies or ways of working? For the hiring managers, we always encourage them to be asking behavior-based questions and listen for flexibility and focus on skills, both technical and soft, that can support the role. We did have one case where we recommended bringing in a cross-generational interview panel so that they could get diverse perspectives on the candidates and not just maybe one age or one perspective. All right, so I welcome you to use the chat if you have other practices that have worked for you, ways that you overcome this concept of being rigid or stuck in our ways. Feel free to share in the chat, or if you have questions, feel free to post in the Q&A. All right, let's move on to the next myth or common phrase. Older workers are too expensive. Okay, so let's dig into the misconception here. Traditional career ladders rewarded tenure with automatic raises and bonuses. And when companies downsized, the salary bands became a convenient shorthand for older equals expensive. Another area is that many employers believe older workers have higher compensation expectations, sorry. They demand higher salaries. They will cost more in benefits due to family or healthcare needs, and they have longer vacation expectations. And then last but not least, hiring managers often assume experienced professionals will reject lower offers even when candidates are explicitly open to fair or flexible pay. One survey found that 60% of employers believed older workers expect higher pay, while only 17% of older workers said pay was their top priority. So you can see how the misconception is flowing here. All right, let's look at the reality. Experience typically translates to faster onboarding, fewer mistakes, and higher retention, all of which directly reduce costs. Experienced hires reach full productivity 30 to 40% faster because they're already mastered core business processes and interpersonal skills, while it typically takes 5 to 8 months for entry and junior level employees to reach full productivity. We also found that organizations with more workers aged 50 plus reported 15% lower absenteeism and 30% fewer safety incidents. Many experienced professionals are willing to take a pay cut or accept fair pay in return for stable work. They're not as interested in climbing the ladder and promotions and all the responsibilities that come with it. Nearly half of workers over the age of 40 report earning less than their younger coworkers, and about 49% say they make less money than young millennial colleagues for doing the same job. So now I have another question for you. What do you think the top priority for older adults looking for a job is? So go ahead and post that in the to everyone chat. Healthcare, purpose, stability, benefits, meaningful work, legacy, getting the job, learn new things, meaningful work, health insurance. Okay, it's coming through fast and furious. Well, according to a recent study, 83% of respondents aged 65 and older cited meaningful work as their top priority. Okay. More and more older adults are also self-managing their wellness with strong health literacy and preventive care habits. So a Mercer study found that age alone is not a significant cost driver in employer health plans. Lifestyle and chronic condition management are much bigger factors, which span all age groups. Okay, so let's look at a marketplace example and then we'll flip the script. So we have Home Depot. They're hiring older trade professionals for customer-facing roles, and turnover among these employees is significantly lower than average retail levels, saving millions in replacement costs. And we're also seeing BMW in Germany retrofitting production lines for an aging workforce, and they saw productivity rise by 7% and absenteeism actually dropped. So it's not a given that all of these older professionals are more expensive. So when 50 Wise flips the script, we say older workers often represent greater value per dollar spent. So when we're working with our candidates, we ask them to lead with value and frame their experience in a way that can improve the hiring company's business. Definitely show flexibility around compensation and look at a holistic package versus just pay. And maybe share examples of how you ramped up quickly or avoided mistakes or somehow saved previous companies or organizations, saved them money. And then be forthright about your priorities. It's okay that meaningful work is your top priority, or maybe you're looking for mentoring opportunities or any host of different priorities, including wanting a stable job and a paycheck. With our hiring managers, we make sure that we're confirming that the salary range they're offering matches the candidate's salary expectations. We talk a lot about that with the hiring managers. We did have an accounting firm come to us because they were growing. It was tax season and they needed to hire someone quickly who could hit the ground running. And they knew that because we bring experienced talent, that we could bring that type of candidate to the table. And in fact, we were able to meet their demand. We also work with them to look at total costs, again, not just salary, and how a stable employee can offset what they think of as a short-term salary expense. Okay, again, please feel free to share your thoughts, your ideas with everyone in the chat. And we are going to move on to the next myth or common phrase. Older workers are not current and relevant marketplace skills, especially technology. So I will say, as you all know, when you registered, you filled out the question about what your hiring experience was. This came across as the number one, like almost double everything else, as the number one experience that folks are having in the marketplace. So we're going to spend some time here and make sure everyone understands this one. All right, so let's look at the misconceptions. This concept of digital native bias. So this started back in the early 2000s by someone named Mark Prensky, and he introduced this concept of digital native versus digital immigrants. And the idea is that younger generations who grew up with technology are better at it than the rest of us because we can't possibly learn it the same way. So that's the first misconception. The second area here is that today's older professionals, when we entered the workplace, we didn't have as many educational degrees as we do today that are so focused on technology, right? I think maybe we had computer science back in the day, but we definitely didn't have data analytics, AI, cybersecurity, UX, digital marketing, and we didn't have coding boot camps, online learning platforms, and all the different certificates that you can get today. I find that it's also about surface level cues like our language, maybe the way we dress, or certain credentials that we bring to the table. They signal datedness to the typical recruiters or hiring managers instead of maybe positioning ourselves as current in the marketplace. And then last but not least, we are seeing that there's what we call a training opportunity bias. Companies are investing less in professional development for older employees, assuming they're close to retirement, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that reinforces the myth. According to AARP, 41% of workers aged 45 and older have not received training in 5 years, but would welcome the opportunity to get it. All right, so let's look at the reality. So experienced workers bring timeless skills and accumulated expertise. So digital fluency, for example, is more about exposure and mindset, not age. Older professionals have gained their proficiency by working in the real world, not in classrooms. So now I have another question for you. I'd like you to share in the chat what you think some of the soft or power skills are that 77% of organizations have mentioned are critical for today's changing workforce. Let's see. Okay. Open up the chat and then there's like stuff. Ooh, judgment, diplomacy, mediation, discretion, adaptability, relationship building, communication, people skills, negotiation, relationships. Okay. Well, the top three that were mentioned in this survey were interpersonal skills, time management, and leadership. But we also see many others, like understanding patterns, having the discipline to learn and make decisions, cross-functional judgment, mentorship, people management. Everyone is looking for 15 plus years of experience wrapped in a younger candidate, but that's extremely rare because it simply takes time to develop the experience. You can't download it, you can't hack it. Experience is earned, lived, tested, and honed. Maybe like a fine wine, compound interest, or maybe even training for a marathon. All examples of things that take time to hone. Um, so we mentioned this before, but we've been participating in rapid digital transformation for years. As a matter of fact, many of us started the technical revolution. And in today's market, researchers estimate that the half-life of technical skills, which the way you define that is half of what you know becomes outdated, used to be 10 years for that to happen in the 1980s. Today, it's about 4 years, and very soon they believe it's going to fall below 2 years. This is leveling the playing field for all of us. And we believe that experience is an asset for the AI revolution happening now. The ability to apply rational assessments and expert analysis is critical to AI, especially now that we're realizing that ChatGPT can outright lie. So research shows that lifelong learning ability and interest is very prevalent among older workers. 62% of workers over 50 completed a professional development course or certification in the past 2 years, which is a much higher rate than workers under 35. And we also see that companies with strong intergenerational learning programs report 30% faster adoption of new market practices. All right, let's go to flipping the script. So experience doesn't expire, it compounds. When we're working with our candidates, we try to encourage them to use current industry terms such as, CRM automation, AI, ChatGPT, where they can. And then to frame learning as a mindset. Say something like, I make it a point to learn one new digital tool every quarter. It keeps me fresh and connected. And it's okay to admit that you're not familiar with a certain tool or methodology when asked. Just make sure to highlight that you enjoy learning and that you have done so successfully in the past. For our hiring managers, we ask them to distinguish between tools and thinking, and to ask questions that reveal how candidates learn on new tools, not just if they know a specific tool. At the end of the day, it's easy to train on a tool. It's not as easy to train on the thinking. All right, so let's keep going. The next one is older workers can't keep up with the pace. This one is my least favorite. I really do not appreciate this one at all. So let's look at some of the misconceptions. There's health assumptions that as workers age, they lose energy, drive, and productivity, that they're going to slow down, struggle, or can't handle fast-paced, fast-moving, high-pressure environments. There's this obsession with youth and Silicon's Valley move fast and break things. Hustle is conflated with output. Energy is often mistaken for personality, loud, animated, constantly on display. There's also this concept that we're going to need more sick days and be in general decline. The stereotypes exaggerate physical changes, assuming that it's automatically going to limit our performance. I'll tell you, just this past October 1st, we celebrated International Day of Older Persons, and we could not find an image that we wanted to portray. It was all these old, decrepit folks walking on canes, nothing that showed vibrant, active professionals. So we ended up just posting the words, International Day of Older Persons. And when you think about pacing, others mistake experienced workers moving deliberately as slow and weak, but it's just strategic thinking. All right, let's look at some facts and the reality. Energy isn't just about physical speed, it's about mental stamina, emotional regulation, and consistency. There's sustained focus, maybe through being less distracted. There's a balance of energy so that they're not getting burned out. There's intrinsic motivation driven by purpose and pride, not just promotion. And there's resilience from navigating years of uncertainty. And there's this projection of steadiness, a calm presence from having experienced so many ups and downs. And we are starting to see more guidelines being published about communication best practices and improved images so that hopefully soon we will have more positive things to choose from. The truth of the matter is that experienced professionals are more engaged and have been linked to higher efficiency and productivity. Companies that leverage older workers' expertise see 10% higher efficiency in project delivery timelines, and workers over 50 have lower absenteeism rates and higher engagement scores than younger cohorts. Now, this is very interesting. Research from Mayo Clinic shows that the brain retains its ability to form new neural connections. What age, you can put this in the chat, what age do you think overall cognitive functioning peaks? I'm curious to see what folks will say. 21, 40, 68, 50. Okay, a lot of 50. Oh, I love 82, 35, 70, 60, 75, 62. Okay, lots of good guesses. According to the Mayo Clinic, it's between ages 55 and 60. And there is a new kind of intelligence called crystallized intelligence that they are monitoring now with older age. So we are not in decline for sure. Okay, so let's look at how we would flip the script. Older professionals channel energy into impact with strategic wisdom. So at 50 Wise, we advise the candidates to describe how you manage time and energy effectively, which will demonstrate maturity and self-awareness. Use examples of how you've navigated ambiguity or transformation, and talk about engagement and productivity examples that you've had in past roles. And then for our hiring managers, we had one straight out tell us that they observe that younger generations' work ethic is completely different. They're later to meetings, they decline meetings, they set boundaries differently and show more entitlement. They literally asked us if we could bring candidates who would be lower maintenance to the table. We ask our hiring managers to think through and differentiate between speed and effectiveness. The fastest response is not always the best decision. Okay, let's look at, we're almost there. This is the second to last one. Older workers will not stay long. All right, so the misconceptions come from outdated career timelines. In the mid-20th century, the norm was to retire at 60 or 65, and employers are still subconsciously operating with that outdated mental model, assuming that anyone in their 50s or 60s is nearing the end of their work life. Careers used to be very linear, and employees tended to stay with the same company for longer and took advantage of pensions and defined benefit plans. So some managers assume that because older workers may not stay 10 plus years, they're not worth the investment. And then other hiring managers assume that older professionals are just looking for something to do and not really going to contribute to the growth of the company. And they may end up being bored over time. All right, let's look at the reality. People are living longer, healthier, and working longer by choice, right? So when Social Security began in 1935, okay, listen to this. Life expectancy was 60 years old. So 65-year-old was the retirement age. Okay, we just saw earlier that life expectancy is up to 77 now. So shouldn't it reason that retirement age would get higher too? And we know that Medicare eligibility is age 65. And right now, the retirement age increased by 2 years to 67. And research is showing that a significant portion of older adults lack adequate savings for a long retirement and will need to keep working. So we need to bridge this gap somehow and get a better experience for everyone involved. Okay, older professionals tend to be more loyal and less likely to job hunt than any other grade age group. In fact, most stay longer than younger hires. So the US Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that workers 50 years old are 5 times less likely to change jobs compared to people 20 to 24. And one of the highest costs to an employer is recruitment. Um, the Society of Human Resources says that it could take 6 to 9 months of an individual's salary to fully replace them when you think about recruiting, hiring, training, and lost productivity. Another source states 75 to 100% of salary to replace someone who leaves. So loyalty is a big win for companies and should be considered. And the average job tenure for all employees is 4 years. So to go in wishing for 10 plus years for anyone is, probably very unrealistic. All right, let's go to flipping the script. At 50 Wise, we believe that older professionals are not winding down, but reinvesting their experience in meaningful work. One big thing that we work with our candidates on is to make sure that you're addressing any gaps in your resume. You could be doing volunteer work, you could be doing unpaid jobs, contract work. It's really important to have something in there so that the employers consider you more relevant in the workplace. And it's okay to talk about, your purpose, your values, and try to match them to the business values. On the hiring manager side, we had one employer approach us because they were having too much turnover with younger employees. And they came to us looking for an older, experienced candidate that would bring more stability and loyalty. And again, we were able to bring candidates to the table. Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to keep going. This is our last one. Older workers can't work with younger managers or teammates. So when we look at this one, there are outdated notions about hierarchy, status, leadership that are leading folks to believe that older professionals will struggle to take direction from someone with less tenure or technical expertise. And employers in general will worry about tension, ego conflicts, and anything else that might happen with the new dynamics in the workplace. As we know, promotion was typically linear and tenure based, so many people grew up in a workplace where seniority meant authority. And then there's varying work and communication styles that might cause friction or lead to a perception of incompatibility. But the truth of the matter is, this is not just based on age. You can have people that have the same age but have different communication styles. So again, the misconception about age being the factor here is not necessarily true. Okay, so let's look at some facts. Older workers are often exceptional team players and collaborators, especially when communication is open and mutual respect is present, which is the case for, I think, any individual. Decades of navigating personalities, leadership styles, and crises build empathy, diplomacy, and adaptability. And research shows that intergenerational teams outperform age homogenous ones, right? So Harvard Business Review shows us that teams with age diversity outperform by 35% in creative problem solving and show higher collective intelligence. And 7 in 10 older workers say they enjoy learning from younger colleagues, and nearly 60% report mentoring relationships across generations. So when we flip the script, we would say older professionals and younger leaders bring out the best in each other through respect and shared purpose. We encourage our candidates to use examples, stories where you've successfully worked with younger leaders, even if you were the manager, right? There's probably stories in your past that you can bring up, that you can share, and give examples of how you navigate diverse personalities and communication styles in general, because that will help portray your ability to navigate this. We did work with the hiring manager once who did express concern about the age and experience of a candidate. She basically said they could be my boss or do my job. So we advocated for that candidate and made sure that we let her know that this person actually is not coming to climb the corporate ladder or take anyone's job. They're just looking for a stable paycheck and an opportunity to work, and that they would be a great fit. And, you know, that's part of what the recruiter does, right? Is we work with the hiring managers to help advocate for the different candidates. And then we save a lot of time by narrowing it down. And then in our case, we actually present a summary of each candidate, highlighting the skills that are most relevant and what the hiring manager should focus on. All right, so that brings us to the end. And so these are the 6 flipped scripts. As I mentioned before, the one that that came the most often in the responses I received from your registrations was older workers are not current in relevant marketplace skills. Number 2 was older workers are too expensive. And number 3, older workers can't work with younger managers or teammates. So that's kind of a little bit about how the numbers played out. So in conclusion, I welcome you to join the movement. At 50 Wise, we believe that we're all stronger when we drop assumptions, biases about anyone. We now have 6 generations in the workforce, and workers over 60 still bring real value. We suggest that everyone try to expand their views of what's essential for a role. This will unlock the value of experienced candidates and the many transferable skills they bring. And finally, we want everyone to embrace the demographic trend of longevity, and we believe it will be a competitive advantage for the future of work. Awesome. How are we doing on questions?
Yes, we do have a number of questions that were submitted in the Q&A box.
Okay.
First, we have from Sandra. She said traditionally older workers were believed to be wiser because of their longer life experience and work experience. This changed in the 1990s. Now that Gen Z is actively recovering traditional ways of living, has Gen Z discovered this set of traditional norms and values yet do you think Gen Z might be willing to recover the traditional norms and values?
I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't have like any specific data or research on Gen Z specifically. Um, but I think it's becoming more and more normal to have these intergenerational teams, and uh, you're kind of forced to work together and appreciate each other. I do see a lot of emphasis on intergenerational teams going both ways, and that younger employees, even schools, are trying to partner with you know, assisted living places so that they can match people. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're getting at, but I do think that folks are starting to appreciate traditional norms and values.
Another question we have is, do you have any tips for navigating hiring algorithms?
Yes. Okay. Good question. So each company gets to set their algorithms. So it would be hard to target an individual company. But in general, what we find is that if they're putting keywords in the job description, it's important that you put similar keywords in your resume. And that will many times at least allow you to get through these automatic tracking systems, and hopefully get to an interview. I know that my co-founder Sylvia Minius has worked with many different candidates on their resumes. You'd be surprised. Sometimes the resumes themselves just need some updating. Uh, and I'm trying to think of some things like I mentioned before, gaps in your work, potentially maybe certain dates, or including too much information that goes way back. Um, so some of those kinds of things need to be trimmed out and shored up so that the resumes can at least get through. I think I read a statistic somewhere that there's like 250 applications for every single job posting. So, as you can imagine, in order to stand out, you're going to have to be very crisp and relevant to that job posting.
The next question that we have is, how do you address concerns with overqualification for roles when we want to take a step back?
I love that question. I am the poster child for that question. That literally happened to me at my last job. I was literally told that I'm overqualified and that I would be bored in this company. And so my response to them was, um, that there's always something new to learn, whether it's the company culture, the political landscape, the individuals themselves. In this case, it was a software company. And so I told them that I'm very keen on learning about the software and the ins and outs, and, how the logistics work in the background, and just bringing my expertise to bear. I'm open to learning, and I'm at a place in my life where I'm not looking for necessarily career growth or title, but I want to remain relevant and stay working. And they were excited. It was like they basically got an amazing deal. Let's put it that way. So I think you just have to make sure that your values are aligned and that you really are serious about willing to take this position, and it'll show.
Amanda asks, certificate seems to be really popular. Do you know which organizations are legit and well respected when it comes to getting certifications?
Oh, I think that's a great question. I don't have a prepared response. I know that I have used Coursera I think there are many options out there. I welcome others if you know of any, if you want to share in the chat. I'm sorry, I do not have a canned response for you, but it's something that maybe I can research and then we can send out in our follow-up email.
Thank you. How does 50 Wise recommend the adoption of AI to its clients? Are people open to adoption from your experience?
Uh, the clients being the candidates or the clients being the companies? I'm assuming candidates. So yes, they are. And what we usually do is we just start with some very basic things like go out and test. You can't break AI. So go out and play around with ChatGPT. We'll give them either some exercises or prompts to put in as they're preparing for interviews or thinking about resumes, or even, that is another one to look for certifications. So that's really what we do. And yes, everyone has been open to it and actually welcome it because they know that it's the way of the future. So yes, I think they are open to it. I do want to take a quick moment to share a pilot opportunity that we have at 50 Wise. And we are looking to partner with a variety of different organizations, right? Our goal is to test new approaches to remove bias and unlock talent, right? We want to find new pathways to hiring, recruiting that take advantage of all these statistics and information that we shared today. So what I will share and leave up, and then we can go back to questions. We have two different QR codes. The one on the left is if you're interested in participating in the pilot, you can look there. And also in that same QR code, as I mentioned in the beginning, I have tons of resources that I've been compiling. So if you're interested in those, you can also use that QR code and just let me know that that's what you're interested in and make sure you share your email and I'll be happy to send that. Now, on the right side, that QR code is an anonymous hiring experience survey. Again, we're in this pilot phase where we're trying to figure out how to improve the hiring experience. And we've posed a variety of different questions, and we would love for everyone to, hear and give us a wide base of data that we can look at as we consider how we're going to move forward. So I invite you to do both or one, whatever resonates with you, and we look forward to hearing from you and partnering with you. Okay, back to questions.
Yes, we have a question from Mosh. For an earlier slide, understanding the ripple effects to system thinking's mindset relating to how entrepreneurs in their 50s have been more successful based on the historical data. How can older workers highlight their systems thinking strengths as a foundational skill in this current age of AI amplification?
Okay, great question. So yes, I believe that AI is, a lot of hype. It's being inflated. I do think that there are scenarios where it's not as useful. And I think you'll have to understand your industry, the roles you're applying for, and there are probably areas where traditional system performance or some of the other power skills that we talked about, whether it's communication or data analysis or additional expertise on top of AI is very important. So I can tell you, for example, in preparing this webinar today, right? I got a ton of data, but it was all over the place and it needed synthesizing. It needed organizing into myths. ChatGPT did not do a good job of that. But on the other hand, when I received all of your responses, your 100 plus responses, I could put all that into ChatGPT and it gave me a nice, neat table of, how many fell in this category and how many fell in that category. So I think we just need to know and understand the pros and cons of AI and the application and how to sell what we can bring value to it. I hope that answers the question.
And this will be the last question for this afternoon. How can long-term unemployed workers over 40 find meaningful, well-paying jobs?
Great question. I mean, that's what we're here to help with. I mean, please reach out to us. We'll be sending our contact information in the follow-up email and ways that you can engage with us. That's our mission. We want to help this particular segment because we do believe there's value. And so I would encourage you to work with a recruiter because unfortunately, the landscape is still very biased, and sometimes you need a third party to advocate for you. But in the meantime, I would say, keep your resume updated, keep your LinkedIn profile updated, look at what the job listing is are asking for and try to weave those keywords into your LinkedIn profile and resume. I mean, that would be the high level, easy hanging fruit.
Okay, so that's going to conclude the questions. Thank you, Maggie, so much for this really helpful presentation. I think it was very insightful for a lot of our guests. As a reminder to all of you, a short survey will pop up once you exit the webinar. So please, please, please complete that survey, and that will help us with programming for future events. Just a few announcements. Homecoming is right around the corner here at U Chicago. So we do have another webinar on November 4th talking about the impact of student athlete experience on personal identity. So if you are interested and would like to attend, feel free to register for that event. I just dropped it in the chat here. And then lastly, we do have a banner competition happening for homecoming, our first ever alumni banner competition. If you would like to participate, submissions are due very soon on October 28th. And we will be dropping in a link for you to participate in the chat as well. And thanks again so much for attending this afternoon session. Maggie, I don't know if you've had any final words for all of us.
No, just stay in touch and we invite you to partner with us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all and take care. Have a great afternoon.